Hello everyone, welcome to General Hospital Daily Channel. Please hit the subscribe button and give this episode a thumbs up. Danny and Charlotte ignore Rocco and walk into a disaster. Let us start with the teen scheme, because Rocco's warnings went unheard and the consequences of that are now approaching with the specific inevitability of something that was always going to unfold exactly this way. Here is what the audience knows that Danny and Charlotte are not fully accounting for. Drew is not a target who is going to absorb a scheme from two teenagers and shrug it off. Drew right now is operating with the specific focus and the specific fury of a man who spent months paralyzed, who came back with months of stored purpose, who has been making promises to destroy people and has been delivering on those promises with deliberate patience. He is not emotionally disorganized in the way that targets of teenage blackmail schemes need to be to make those schemes work. He is intelligent, he is alert, and he already views Danny as someone who has reasons to work against him. Rocco understood all of this. Rocco has been the voice of reason in this situation with a consistency that has made him one of the most quietly wise characters of the summer. He told them this would not end well. He pushed for patience. He argued that the right approach was not a manufactured frame but a longer game, letting the adults around them work through the situation while the kids stayed clear of Drew's direct attention. Danny and Charlotte made him think they were dropping it. They were not dropping it. They simply adjusted their strategy to keep Rocco uninvolved so that his objections could not slow them down. The problem with teenage schemes against adult enemies is not the concept, it is the execution gap. Danny and Charlotte have the motivation and the creativity and the willingness to take risks. What they do not have is the experience, the discipline, or the specific institutional knowledge of how a man like Drew responds when he discovers someone has been working against him. Drew finding out about a scheme Danny orchestrated is not going to produce a measured response. It is going to produce escalation. Drew is already doing everything he legally can to keep Danny away from Scout. Discovering that Danny and Charlotte were actively trying to manufacture blackmail material is going to give Drew exactly the justification he needed for a more aggressive position. And Scout is the person who pays the price for that. The relationship she has been so desperately trying to protect, the access to her brother that she has been asking for and quietly working toward, gets further away every time Danny takes a step that gives Drew legitimate reason to increase his restrictions. Charlotte, who has her own relationship with Valentine that does not need additional complications, is also walking into consequences that Lulu and Valentine are going to have strong opinions about. Rocco is going to be in the very uncomfortable position of watching something he tried to prevent unfold anyway. The specific frustration of being right when your advice was not taken is something Rocco has been dealing with all summer, but this time the consequences are going to be significant enough that his discomfort will be entirely justified. The moment Drew figures out what Danny and Charlotte were attempting, and Drew, who survived months of silent, strategic planning while locked in a wheelchair, will figure it out, the response is going to be immediate and disproportionate in the way that responses from someone with nothing to lose and everything to protect always are. Danny may find himself in the most restricted access situation yet, which is the opposite of what the scheme was intended to produce. Rick at Elizabeth's house and the proposal that never happened. Now let us talk about Thursday and the scene that is going to define where the Rick storyline goes from here, because what happened at Elizabeth's house is the moment that Rick's spiral stops being an internal struggle and becomes visible to everyone in his orbit. Rick arrived with an engagement ring. He had made the decision, the one he discussed with Sunny, the one that came from the specific urgency of jealousy rather than from a considered place of genuine readiness. He drove to Elizabeth's house with the ring and the intention, and he walked through the door into the exact scene his worst fears had been constructing for weeks. Dante was on the sofa, without pants, because of a knee injury, which is entirely medically explainable and entirely innocent in context. A knee injury requires the kind of examination and icing and elevation that makes pants complicated and which produces exactly the kind of visual that, stripped of context and filtered through the specific lens of accumulated jealous suspicion, looks like something it completely is not. Rick's imagination did the rest. He barged in. He unleashed it. All of it. The weeks of watching, the concern he could not bring himself to communicate directly, the fear of being replaced as the person Elizabeth turns to, the wound of feeling cast aside as her confidant, came out not as an honest conversation but as an eruption of everything he had been sitting on. Elizabeth did not fold. She pushed back. Hard. Dante is her guest. He is not going anywhere because Rick's jealousy has invented a situation that does not exist. She made that clear with the specific firmness of someone who has dealt with this pattern before in this specific relationship and knows exactly where letting it slide leads. Rick ended up being the one who stormed out. Not the outcome he planned when he arrived with the ring. What happens after he leaves is as important as the confrontation itself. Elizabeth, once alone with Dante, will vent. And what she says to Dante in that venting moment is going to reveal everything about where she actually is in relation to Rick. She sees the old patterns creeping back. She recognizes what jealousy of this particular kind looks like in Rick specifically because she has watched it develop in him before. She is not convinced that this version of the spiral ends differently than the previous ones did. That concern, expressed to Dante, who is the person she trusts enough to say it to, is the most honest thing Elizabeth has said about Rick all summer. And the fact that Dante is the person she said it to is not going to improve Rick's assessment of a situation if he ever finds out. Rick going straight from Elizabeth's house to Lulu with his scheme is the decision that takes everything from an emotional problem to an active disaster. Lulu is genuinely taken aback by what he brings to her. His plan, to disrupt what is developing between Liz and Dante before it becomes something he cannot stop, is the kind of move that Sonny specifically would disapprove of if he knew about it. Sonny gave Rick relationship advice. Sonny pointed toward legitimate communication as the solution. This is the opposite of that. Carly arriving in the middle of this with her own information and her own advice to Lulu is the specific Port Charles complication that turns a bad idea into something more complicated. Whatever Carly knows, whether it is about Lulu's real feelings for Dante, or about the Charlotte situation, or about something else entirely, is going to land in a moment where Lulu is already processing Rick's request and her own hesitation about getting involved. The ring is still in Rick's pocket, and the woman he brought it for just told him exactly who she is and what she will and will not accept. He has a choice to make about what that means going forward. And the choice he is currently making, running to schemes and alliances, is not the right one. Jocelyn warns Jason, Anna introduces Tristan, and Curtis prepares for the hardest chapter. And finally, let us look at the other significant developments Thursday is carrying, because this episode is one of those packed ones where multiple crucial conversations happen simultaneously. Jocelyn's warning to Jason about Brit is one of the most direct things anyone has said to him since he came back from Jakarta. She does not soften it. She does not frame it diplomatically. She looks at him and tells him plainly that if he gives Brit enough time, she will sell him out. You give her enough time, she's going to sell you out. That sentence contains everything the summer has been building about the Brit situation, the Kasha secret, the omission that has been sitting between Brit and Jason since his return, the pattern of choices Brit makes when she is protecting herself that tend to prioritize her own survival over other people's interests. Jocelyn has seen enough of the WSB world to understand what people do under institutional pressure and what loyalty looks like when it is genuine versus when it is tactical. Whether Jason takes this seriously or files it away as Jocelyn being cynical is the question that determines the entire shape of what comes next between him and Brit. If he dismisses it, he's going to be blindsided by the truth about Cassius when it surfaces through another channel. If he hears it, he may have the honest conversation with Brit that he should have had weeks ago, which is its own kind of painful, but at least positions him to respond with agency rather than surprise. Anna introducing Tristan to Jocelyn is a scene that is doing more than just making an introduction. Tristan has strong feelings about the WSB, which, given what we know about his complicated history with Brennan and the personal history that nobody has fully named yet, is an understatement of considerable dimensions. Putting Tristan and Jocelyn in a room where those feelings are going to surface is putting someone who knows things about the organization that Jocelyn does not in direct contact with the person who is most newly inside it. Thank you for watching. For daily update, don't forget to subscribe the channel and hit the bell icon.